What happens when outdated jets try to stare down a warship built to fight 21st century battles? That question sits at the center of today's uneasy chess match between the United States and Venezuela. Tensions are climbing fast. President Nicolas Maduro has vowed to defend Venezuela's sovereignty after a U.S. airstrike destroyed a speedboat in the southern Caribbean, killing 11 alleged cartel members. Washington framed it as a victory in the fight against narco-terrorism. Caracas called it a blatant violation. Within days, the U.S. surged more than 4,000 troops and multiple destroyers into the region, signaling that any challenge at sea would be met head-on. Then came Venezuela's reply. Two of its aging F-16 Fighting Falcons thundered low over the waves and cut across the bow of the USS Jason Dunham, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, bristling with sensors and missiles. The Pentagon didn't mince words, blasting the maneuver as highly provocative. For the sailors watching from the deck, the jets looked dramatic, even menacing. But for the ship's Combat Information Center, it was something else entirely. A live stream of Venezuelan capabilities handed over on a silver platter. Because here's the imbalance no flyby can hide. Venezuela's F-16s are relics of the 1980s, struggling to stay airworthy. The destroyer beneath them is a floating fortress, wired into satellites, drones, and an entire naval task force. One side flexes for the cameras, the other collects intelligence, maintains comm, and holds every advantage. And that sets up the real question. Could Venezuela's fighters ever survive against a modern U.S. destroyer? To understand why Venezuela's F-16s don't stand a chance, you first need to understand what they're up against: the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. On paper, it's a warship. In reality, it's a floating fortress designed to fight across air, sea, land, and under the waves, all at the same time. Let's start with size. At over 500 feet long and displacing between 8,300 and 9,700 tons, depending on the variant, a Burke is no small target, but it is built for survivability. Steel and Kevlar reinforced hull is compartmentalized so the ship can take damage and keep fighting. And unlike a single jet, this destroyer carries enough weapons to hold off an entire air squadron, sink submarines, and launch strikes hundreds of miles inland. The beating heart is the Aegis combat system. Picture a central brain tying together radars, weapons, and data links into one seamless network. The Spy 1 phased array radar can track more than 100 targets simultaneously. The latest Flight 3 variants upgrade to Spy 6, a radar even more sensitive, capable of detecting smaller, stealthier threats at longer ranges. In simple terms, if you're flying toward a Burke, the ship saw you long before you saw it. Then there's the magazine. Each destroyer carries around 90 to 96 vertical launch cells. Inside are a tailored mix of weapons: SM-2 and SM-6 missiles for high-altitude aircraft and long-range intercepts, ESSMs for medium-range defense, Tomahawks for land attack, and ASROC rockets for submarines. Think of it as a ready-made arsenal under the deck. And if something does slip through, the last line of defense is brutal. The Phalanx CIWS, or CIWS, a 20mm Gatling gun that spits out up to 75 rounds per second, forming a wall of tungsten designed to shred anything that gets too close. Many ships now add C-RAM launchers, stacking another layer of short-range protection. Top it off with embarked MH-60R Seahawks, naval helicopters that hunt submarines, spot surface threats, and even carry Hellfire missiles. Together, ship and air wing form a self-contained combat bubble. So, when Venezuelan F-16s buzz an Arleigh Burke, they aren't rattling an empty hull. They're poking at a warship that combines firepower, radar coverage, and layered defenses into one of the most lethal packages afloat. Venezuela's frontline fighter is the F-16 Fighting Falcon, but calling them frontline today feels generous. These jets were once cutting edge, back in the 1980s. In 1982, Caracas purchased 24 F-16Bs under the U.S. Peace Delta program, making Venezuela the first Latin America country to field the type. For a while, it was serious air power upgrade for them, supersonic speed, agility, and advanced radar for the era. Fast forward 4 decades, and the fleet is a shadow of what it once was. Due to U.S. sanctions and the lack of access to spare parts, maintenance has been a nightmare. Analysts estimate that only a handful, maybe 3 or 4, are still airworthy today. Even those are kept flying through improvised fixes and cannibalization of other airframes. Reliability is always in question. Technologically, they're stuck in time. These are early block F-16As and Bs, meaning that they lack the upgrades that make the modern Vipers lethal. No stealth shaping, outdated avionics, limited data link capability. Their radar sets are decades old, offering nothing close to the situational awareness a pilot would need against a warship bristling with sensors. Even speed isn't a saving grace. Yes, the F-16 can push past Mach 2, but velocity means little when the ship can detect and engage you from over the horizon. Closing the distance would only expose the jets to interceptors like the SM-2 or ESSM, missiles that were designed to swat supersonic targets. For Caracas, these F-16s remain symbols of national pride, paraded as proof that the Air Force still has teeth. But symbols don't equal capability. In a real exchange, these aircraft wouldn't just be outmatched, they'd be outclassed before they even fired a shot. So why exactly would a Venezuelan F-16 have no realistic chance against a U.S. destroyer? The answer comes down to 3 things: detection, layered defense, and survivability. First, detection. Modern warfare isn't a fair fight of who sees who first. It's about who never goes unseen. The USS Jason Dunham, like every Arleigh Burke-class, ties into the Aegis combat system. Its Spy 1 radar scans 360 degrees, tracking well over 100 contacts at once, from high-flying jets to sea-skimming missiles. And in newer ships, the Spy 6 goes even further, spotting smaller, stealthier targets at longer ranges. Compare that to the radar in a 1980s-era F-16A. Limited range, no stealth to hide its own signature, and virtually no chance to surprise a destroyer that's plugged into satellites, drones, and patrol aircraft. Long before the Venezuelan pilot even closes in, the ship knows exactly where they are, their speed, their altitude, and their bearing. Second is the layered defense. An Arleigh Burke doesn't rely on a single weapon. Engagement starts at long range with SM-2 or SM-6s, fast, high-altitude interceptors that can destroy an aircraft well before it gets within striking distance. If a jet somehow passes closer, the ship switches to Evolved Sea Sparrow missiles, or ESSMs, designed to catch maneuvering threats at medium range. Should anything slip through that, the Phalanx Sea Whiz spits out 75 rounds a second of tungsten at the target. And many ships now mount Sea-Ram launchers, essentially small missile batteries for short-range kills. Each layer buys time, shrinks options, and multiplies the risk for any attacker. Third, survivability. Destroyers are built to take a hit and keep fighting. They're compartmentalized, armored, and carry firefighting equipment and damage control systems that jets simply can't match. An F-16 is a single airframe. One missile, one burst of Sea Whiz fire, and it's gone. The imbalance is obvious. One side has depth and redundancy, the other doesn't. But there's also the tactical factor here. A destroyer doesn't fight alone. Even Big F Venezuelan pilots thought that they were facing just the Jason Dunham. Well, the reality is much harsher. That ship is connected to a task force. Other destroyers, cruisers, patrol aircraft, even stealth fighters repositioned in Puerto Rico. The F-16s aren't just flying against one radar, they're flying against an entire network. In short, speed and bravado mean little when your opponent sees you coming from over the horizon, layers defenses around itself, and can erase you from the fight with a single button press. That's why the edge isn't just with the destroyer, it's overwhelming. On September 4th, these tense standoffs between Washington and Caracas moved from speeches to the open sea. At 2:30 p.m. local time, 2 Venezuelan F-16s thundered low over the Caribbean, banking straight towards the Dunham. To onlookers, it looked like a classic buzz, a show of force meant to rattle the American crew. To the Pentagon, it was something else entirely. Highly provocative, they called it, and dangerously close to sparking a bigger confrontation. This wasn't an isolated stunt either. Just 2 days earlier, a U.S. airstrike had destroyed a Venezuelan-linked speedboat, killing 11 suspected cartel members. Maduro denounced it as a violation of sovereignty, vowing retaliation. Caracas chose a visible but calculated option: send a couple of jets to harass a destroyer, grab some headlines, and show domestic audiences that Venezuela wasn't bowing to pressure. From the deck of the Jason Dunham, the display was loud but hardly threatening. The ship's Aegis system had tagged the jets long before sailors even saw them. Radio warnings went out. Unidentified aircraft, you are approaching a United States warship operating in international waters. Maintain a safe distance. Silence. Then one pilot lit his afterburner and streaked across the bow, his exhaust trail glowing against the blue sky. For Venezuela, the footage looked like defiance. State media framed it as standing up to American aggression. But inside the destroyer's Combat Information Center, the mood was very calm. Every radar ping from the F-16s, every radio call back to their base, even the heat plume from their afterburners, was logged by the ship's electronic warfare suite. What looked like bravado was actually intelligence gold. Washington's response was swift. Within days, 10 F-35 Lightning II stealth fighters deployed to Puerto Rico, putting fifth-generation aircraft just a couple hours away from Venezuelan airspace. Meanwhile, at least 7 U.S. warships continued patrol in the Caribbean. The message was clear. If Venezuela wanted to keep playing chicken, well, the stakes were climbing fast. This flyby didn't change the balance of power at all. It only highlighted it. On one side, relic fighters straining to look dangerous. On the other side, a destroyer that hadn't even flinched, backed by an entire strike group. The risk was never that Venezuela could sink a U.S. warship. It was that one misstep could turn a stunt into a shooting war. In the end, the matchup was never fair. Venezuela's F-16s, relics of the Cold War, might look dramatic skimming the waves, but against a U.S. destroyer, they're hopelessly outclassed. An Arleigh Burke isn't just a ship, it's a fortress, wired to a fleet, with layers of defense designed to wipe out threats like this long before they even get close. So the question is simple, really. Was Venezuela's flyby a bold act of defiance, or just a dangerous miscalculation? If you were standing on the deck of that destroyer watching 2 supersonic jets scream overhead, would you see that as a threat or as a bluff? I'd love to hear your take in the comments below. Thanks for sticking around for this breakdown. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who's really into real military stories. And hey, if you want to go a step further and support our channel directly, please join the fleet. We'll give you some loyalty badges, some priority responses, and you'll be helping us bring more true maritime stories to the surface. Just click join on our channel page and get right on board with us. Because at the end of the day, Venezuela's F-16s didn't rattle the U.S. Navy at all. They handed it free intel. And, if you're gonna play chicken with a destroyer, well, you'd better be ready for the punchline, because the ship won't even blink. I'll see you next time.